Are you building your own rocket ship as well, or should we leave that to the Amazon folks?
So I came really close to doing that. I was going to be a neurosurgeon. So
You were all set.
I could have almost done that.
Hi, this is Frank Schaeffer, and you are watching and or listening to my podcast, In Conversation with Frank Schaeffer. And that's a Facebook Live, and that is also on Podcast Later, YouTube, and so forth. Today, I'm talking with founder and CEO of Embolden Media Group, Jevon Bolden. And we've had one previous conversation. We have a mutual friend, but I'm so interested in the range of things that Jevon is doing. We're going to get into that today. So first of all, welcome, Jevon, to my little podcast here, and thank you for coming on.
Absolutely. I am really, really excited to be here with you today. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. So unless I'm wrong, correct me, but you are a writer.
Yes.
You are an agent.
Yes.
For other writers. So you package other people's deals. Are you building your own rocket ship as well, or should we leave that to the Amazon folks?
So I came really close to doing that. I was going to be a neurosurgeon. So
you were all set.
I could have almost done that.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to know how to spend those billions of dollars, right?
Right. But maybe I'll craft it. I was thinking maybe a rocket scientist kind of person.
Okay, well, my hobby is masonry in the summer, and I'm building myself an outdoor pizza oven. So that's about my level of exploration and conquest here. Humble stuff, and it won't fly, but I mean, maybe I can do some good cooking in that. So
yeah, I think that might be that might be more valuable.
I think so. I mean, if two lines were forming and one was for 30 seconds on the edge of space where basically big weather balloons go, and I've spent billions to get there, and the other is to have a halfway decent pizza, I think I'll take the pizza.
I think I might too.
I will, yeah. Okay, so let me start with a weird question, because in a conversation I had with you before, and with our friend Brian, who has sort of roped you into some projects, the name Frederick Buechner keeps coming up. And he is a big fan of Buechner and his writing because of spiritual values. And Brian is working with you trying to get those spiritual values out and helping people who come at their writing as a kind of a spiritual exercise. So the first thing I want to ask you is, does that describe you? Are you coming as a writer agent with sort of an angle that is spiritual, or is this all about literature and the publishing market? I mean, who are you building bridges for when you agent for people, and how do you see yourself as a writer? And I'm a novelist. I'm also a writer of fiction and nonfiction, but because of my evangelical background, which I fled, my life is sort of a spiritual journey that I track through my writing.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the way I'd answer the question. Now, how would you answer that question in terms of how you'd place yourself in terms of spirituality and writing? That's not what this podcast is about, but I thought I'd start with something awkward.
No, that's fantastic. I love that because, for me, writing has always sort of been this place where I find myself, So yeah, I would say it's absolutely a spiritual practice for me. And the writers, let me just stay there for a minute. I started writing very young, before I even understood that, writing was a thing. I've had diaries and journals since I can remember even being able to write a letter. And the letter, speaking of, so I was actually talking about the actual alphabet. But then another thing that I think, that just actually popped into my head, Frank, is how I built relationships with my grandmothers through letter writing. So we would exchange communication, and that was really special. And for me, I think that kind of exchange between generations and all of that, I feel like it is in some ways spiritual. It's part of our spiritual journey.
Yeah.
For me. But yeah, as far as, writing has always been that place where I discover who I am again and again and again. And I would imagine that my authors that I represent would probably say something similar.
So when I look at this Embolden Media Group, That's your agency, right?
Yes.
So where's the embolden part come in? And then we're going to get back to a longer answer on what we were talking about in terms of spirituality and writing and where you're coming from. Just tell me about the embolden part.
Yeah, absolutely. So the word embolden means to fortify, to give life to bolster, to lift up, to encourage. And I think, one of what I feel, part of my purpose in publishing, working with writers, whether I'm in publishing or not, is to help encourage them and embolden them, give them that courage, that boldness, that bravery to pursue something that, a lot of times people don't even know, is this really something? Can I really pursue this?
Sure.
We sort of have this place, especially creative people, we sort of aren't really sure if what we're thinking up and dreaming up is valuable or worth anything. And I just think, ideas and the things that we have as humans, the things that we create are just absolutely divine, absolutely incredible. And so if I can be there to support and say, yes, you can do it. Yes, this is a thing. Yes, this has value. Pursue it, research it, figure it out, write it out. I'm going to do that. And
when I see Embolden, I'm thinking to myself, well, you could have another name, founder and CEO of the Embolden Media Group for Former Cowards. How you're emboldening them for former scaredy cats.
Yes, and one of my I guess mantras is definitely do it scared. Like, don't wait to have it all. You won't ever have it all figured out.
Well, here's a harder and meaner question. Not mean to you, but not as nice in terms of, not as Oprah-esque in terms of like lift up everybody up. It seems to me as a writer who's been doing this for 40 years and both fiction and nonfiction, and started my publishing career in what I would call the professional old school publishing business, books, paper, editors, no self-publishing. You either got published or you didn't. I see some projects out there, especially in the self-publishing world, where somebody should have said, keep your day job. That's mean. But, I don't think publishing's in very good shape. And one reason is that the gatekeepers have gone away. So I hope one of your, callings in the vocation of being an agent is both to guide people to better writing and maybe find a good editor, but also guide them out of the ambition to be a writer. I was telling your friend Brian and my friend Brian the other day, the airplane conversation I least enjoy in the old days before COVID, when I used to fly places.
Yes.
I sort of given up on it. I'm kind of done with all. If it's within 800 miles, I'll drive.
It's not going. Yeah.
I'll drive. I'm sorry. I'm just not doing it.
Yeah.
But, oh, you're a writer. Oh, I'm thinking of writing a book. And I feel like turning to them and saying, well, what do you do for a living? Oh, well, I'm a cardiac thoracic surgeon. Oh, well, I was thinking of trying that too.
Right.
Okay,
anybody can do it.
Yeah. I'm a police officer. Well, I try to catch criminals. I mean, come on. Don't tell me, who've spent 40 years trying to write something and has 15 books and a couple, things that I struggle with. The last book that's coming out in November, I've gone through 27 drafts. It's a 5.5-year project. I had to read over 100 books myself so that my sciencey friends would stop telling me that I was writing bullshit. In other words, they said, you know this part, but you don't know that part. Read something else. So I get kind of ticked off as an old white fart looking back over my career in judgment of, every young person coming along trying to write. Look, either take this seriously and do it professionally. I'm not saying you have to succeed.
Yeah.
Didn't say that. Didn't say you have to write bestsellers.
Right.
But none of this business, I think I have a book in me. Then don't be a writer. If that's celebrity crap. I have a book in me. Okay, now I've done my harsh, mean thing. I want you to either rebut me or agree or say something, because you're a professional. This is what you do. You represent people. How do you feel about my little rant here?
So, I think that each of us has sort of I think there's room for all of those kinds of, thoughts. And I think it's important for people who are saying that I have a book in me to hear from writers like you and to understand, this took me 27 drafts to even get here. And I'm still trying to figure it out, because there is this idea that, it should just be, flowing. I should just have these ideas. If I sit down, it should just happen. It's not like that at all.
Yeah.
Part of the work that I do as an agent, obviously, I'm not accepting everyone and saying, oh, come and I'll represent you and you're going to get the best publishing deal. My thought to how I exist in this space is to be authentic to what I know is good and will somehow embolden and bolster culture, people. So I really will curate what I'm representing. But I also at the same time feel like it's not my position to squash anyone else's creativity. Yeah. It doesn't mean that I will accept it necessarily, but I'm certainly not going to stand in your way of creating what you want to create.
Well, and you're an agent, you're representing the writer, so you have to be on their side. Whereas I'm another writer, and to be honest, as a writer, writers are like crabs, okay? There's a little space under a rock in the ocean and one crab sits there, another one comes, it's like, what are you doing here?
Yeah,
this is my spot. Don't talk to, I don't want to meet other writers. There's only so much room on the bookshelf.
Right. Yeah, and you're right.
And I'm already ticked off because the letter S comes late in the alphabet. So my books are down near the floor in Barnes and Noble, A, B, C, D. I mean, what the heck? I'm already down here. Don't tell me that you want to be okay, I'm sort of being facetious, but you understand, writers. I mean, we do not rejoice in other people's bestsellers. And when we say we do, we're just pretending.
Well, and of course, hopefully getting maybe an endorsement or something on the back end or some type of, offer, whatever. Yeah, it is my position to support writers. But again, publishing is competitive. I'm not going to, and at the same time, I'm encouraging, there has to be a realistic conversation about whether something can be really successful or not, or if this
or even worth doing.
Or worth doing. Absolutely.
Yeah. So anyway, I'll leave this bitter note alone, and we'll get back to the spiritual ideals, which are so much nicer to talk about. So, when I track my journey out of my evangelical background and into a more progressive stance politically and theologically described by the title of a small book I did a few years ago called Why I'm an Atheist Who Believes in God, which about sums it up. In other words, there's part of my head that believes and gets up in the morning and prays for my grandchildren and for friends who are ill. And then there's a part of my brain saying, I don't believe any of this. I think that science probably is right most of the time. Bronze Age myths gathered in books we call holy, whether they're Bibles or Sanskrit manuscripts or the Quran, whatever it may be. Okay, there's some insight there because there's a lot of collective spiritual wisdom in them, but don't tell me all this stuff actually happened. I don't believe it. I'm not putting you on the spot. But now to go back to your background, did you start out in church? Are you a church person?
I'm a church person. So
and I'm not saying start out like you shouldn't be there anymore, but like, what are you doing? What are your first religious memories? Mine are my mom drawing pictures to illustrate 1.5 hour long sermons my dad was preaching and try to keep me sitting still. What are your first memories?
Oh my. That's an interesting question because let's see. So I think this is part of what we talked about. I did my first experiences were probably so I was a Seventh-day Adventist, raised Seventh-day Adventist in a Black Seventh-day Adventist community, which is different than a white Seventh-day Adventist.
Now
community.
Stop there and tell me how Seventh-day Adventist white and Black is different. I'm interested. Just tell me about that.
I think it's just the lived experience of the collective Black, I guess the Black experience kind of shapes how faith is expressed. It was still fairly orthodox. I think some people get the impression, I'm just going to say this, that Black church is like this, very fiery, emotional kind of, the service is very upbeat. There's instruments, there's singing, there's choirs, there's this. My experience wasn't quite that style of Black church. It was pretty, I would say, a little bit more orthodox.
And where was this happening? Where were you?
So I was in Huntsville, Alabama.
Wow. I mean, there's the South and then there's Huntsville.
Yeah, about that. Yeah, that's wild. So that's where I grew up. And so the community was sort of centered around Oakwood University, which is a historically Black college and university. So that was my whole growing up experience, just this sort of, I call it an oasis in the midst of the South, you know.
And what were your parents' involvement in their local church, or parent, or whomever was raising you? What was the deal?
So my dad was there going to school to be a pastor. Okay. My mom was also attending, but also working at the college. It was a college at the time and later earned its university status. But yeah, and so I went to private school, you know, private Christian school there most of my 12 years in, you know, high school and elementary school.
And that was an Adventist school? It
was, okay. Black Adventist. So it was just, go ahead.
No, go ahead. And then did your dad become a pastor?
He did. He did. So great. It was, now that was a really interesting, because so I say we because pastors' families. So he pastored 3 churches in the back roads of Tennessee. So this is still this is probably in the 80s-ish, 90s-ish, maybe 90s, maybe 80s, I'll say 80s. And there were still the signs like no colors after dark. Nice. And so we're driving through to go to these churches. Of course, there's prayer meeting and midweek service, and then there's service during church on Saturday.
And is there any integration in these churches at all, or is it all just Black Seventh-day Adventist?
It was Black Seventh-day Adventist. There were a few white people, and then so the college itself had lots of diversity in terms of Black people, Black skinned people. So there were people from Africa and the different countries in Africa, from Haiti, from the Virgin Islands, from all over the world.
And then while you were there, were you questioning anything? Do you today? I'm going to come back to this part of the story, but I'm going to fast forward. Like right now, would you describe yourself as a Seventh-day Adventist?
No.
Okay, no. So at what point did that break come?
About 19.
And then if you can roll back to that period of time, were you questioning things, or did you just suddenly have the whole time?
So the great thing I would say about how I was raised with my parents is to have just like you're talking about being on a spiritual journey yourself, I feel like God is big enough for all of that, you know? So, I always felt like it was okay to have questions. And
did your parents think it was okay, or were they pretty much by the book?
Not by the book.
Okay.
And I would say they had a strong desire. They believed in the Seventh-day Adventist denomination and what it taught, the doctrines and so forth. But they always, I felt, exhibited to me sort of like this faith that was independent of a system or what other people kind of tell you.
And did you have siblings?
Yes, I have one brother.
And where did you fall in how many kids?
Just 2. I'm the oldest.
And you're the oldest. And so do you have a sister or brother?
Brother.
And is he still going on with the Adventist program, and you're the one who got out, or not?
I'm trying to think, would he say that? I believe he would say he's still Seventh-day Adventist.
And how about your parents? Are they living?
They're living.
Okay, and are they still part of the deal?
Yeah, they are.
And in a Black Adventist church, or in a more a church that's a little more mixed race now? Are they still in Tennessee, or where are they now?
No, so they're still all in Huntsville.
They're still all back in Huntsville. So the Tennessee thing was just a school deal.
So the Tennessee thing was where the churches were.
I get it.
We lived in Huntsville and commuted. So we were probably commuting between 30 minutes and an hour away. We would kind of rotate which churches we were going to.
So what was the history of the Seventh-day Adventist Black church? Because as I understand it, the beginning of the Seventh-day Adventist church originally was started by white people.
Yeah. I actually don't know the detail of that, outside of the fact
Nor do I. That's not a rhetorical question. I don't know either. I'm just asking if you know anything about, because it would be,
obviously there's segregation.
Sure.
You know, literally there's two separate conferences, there's two separate, you know, leaders, you know.
I always wonder about how any of that gets going. It's like, you know, I always ask my daughter, Jessica, who's now 50 and works in New York, but she got married to somebody from Finland, where there's 6 months of dark and 6 months of summer, and it's freezing cold up there. And it was my joke with her was who was the first person who showed up here and said, hey, it's dark and frozen all winter. We can't grow anything. Let's stay
Let's
here.
live here. Yeah.
So I always wonder with offshoots of white kind of churches, some white guy showed up and said, now look, we're the true church and I want you to join us. Now here's a catch. You got to go worship by yourselves because we're also going to segregate you away because we're racist, but we want you to join us. Come on in, just don't come into our church. I don't understand how that first person crosses the line and says, yeah, this sounds like a good deal. We'll do that. I mean, that's the whole history of white Christianity anyway, in America.
Yeah.
And it always amazes me. Like, you know, when my dad went to Hampton-Sydney College in Virginia, I went and visited the school about 20 years ago as a speaker. And they were showing me the slave gallery upstairs. And it was for the personal manservant slaves of the upper class white Virginian gentlemen who would bring their slave with them and then let them go to church up here in the balcony and then go back to being your slave. And it's like, how did you explain Christianity to your slave and get him to go to church based on this was, you know, here's another thing I want you to do. Now, you know, so when it gets to the Adventists, I just obviously have the same question. That opens a huge...
it would probably be the same. It would probably be the same narrative. I mean, which is, you know, there's, if you know about how Christianity and slavery intersect, obviously there was a whole different Bible even. You know what I mean? Certain things were taken out about liberation and all of that so that they wouldn't even get those ideas. Of course, you know, they couldn't really control that. But when it comes to, you know, Seventh-day Adventism or any denomination, the SBC, the different ones are having issues even now.
Sure. And of course, the Southern Baptists were founded because they broke away from the Baptists in the North because they were anti-slavery and the Southern Baptists wanted to preach slavery.
Right. So I guess when it comes to, that's what I mean by a similar narrative, I'm sure. And what you said probably would be it in a really raw nutshell. But I don't, you know, I don't have a history of what that is. I do know that obviously it's based in racism and segregation, and it continues to this day.
Well, I love the two Bibles narrative because it's all there, isn't it? I mean, Jefferson is sitting there in Monticello cutting up his Bible with nail scissors to get all the Jesus miracles out and make it rational. Meanwhile, raping his 14-year-old slave and not freeing his own kids. Someone else's bright idea is to cut the bits of the Bible out where slaves will come to their master and say, hey, you shouldn't be treating me this way. And keep in the 1 or 2 verses in the Old Testament and the New Testament about slavery that seem to be
obeying your master. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. Put it this way, to put it really mildly, this is an awkward relationship of Christianity and the Black experience. Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
So, okay, you're 19 and you decide to come out of the Seventh-day Adventist, come out as in like, I'm not doing that anymore, or just sort of slide away?
I just made a clean cut. I talked to my parents. My parents and I have a really strong relationship.
Good.
Where I feel like I could talk to them about literally anything.
Good.
And I said, this is not for me. I really feel like, you know, if I'm looking at, you know, again, if I'm looking at my experience with God, I just feel like there's more for me. And this is very limited.
Does that manifest itself in another actual association, or are you just sort of out there by yourself? Or
I enjoy church. I enjoy my relationship with God. So I still went to church, you know, I still engaged with basic Christian practices, reading the Bible, prayer. And, you know, obviously not obviously, but trying to live a good life. I you know, you say things sort of, you know, obviously trying to live a good life, but we see that that's not necessarily everyone's
not necessarily
expression the case of Christianity. But yeah, that was something that's important to me. And it to me made sense, and I wanted to stay in that space, but I did not feel like certain, you know, ways that Seventh-day Adventists interpreted
Sure.
that relationship between us and God was fitting for me.
Okay, so let's turn the page here and go to you as a writer. Talk about your writing, talk about your publishing, talk about what you would like to see happen with your work and what you're interested in letting folks who are watching this podcast, watching this program with me and or listening to the podcast. This is In Conversation with Frank Schaeffer. Today, I'm talking with founder and CEO of Embolden Media Group. Jevon is an agent. She is a writer. She is a former Seventh-day Adventist church girl who grew up in the South. And there's the South, and then there's Huntsville. So it was like being in the South wasn't enough. You had to do the whole thing. It's like, okay, how do we describe Jevon? Well, you know, she grew up in the South, not the South, it was Huntsville, and she was a church girl, but not any church. Probably one of the weirder groups when it comes to what they believe and have to do. It's like, has your whole life been one of extremes here, Jevon, or are we going mainstream here all of a sudden?
You know, I don't know. I am grateful for the experiences that I have had. I feel like they add to my ability to talk with people about various things, understand people. Because I mean, if we kind of picked each of our lives apart, we would probably say, well, that was pretty extreme, or that was pretty weird. Yeah, right.
You're talking to somebody who like describes himself as, you know, just sort of I mean, I like talking with you because your life is almost on a par of sort of odd background as mine. And then, but if you want to go the final step, talk to me about my child.
Right. And so, but you know, I'm grateful, honestly. Yeah. I'm grateful. I don't feel like, you know, any of it was wasted. Yeah. You know, obviously, who wants to go through hard times, but the lessons and things that come out of it are such a gift. And if they can make us more empathetic and compassionate, you know, let's do it.
Well, and I found a lot of empathy and compassion in the evangelical group I was raised in. You know, I got Jeannie pregnant when we were 17 and 18. That's 52 years ago now. If we hadn't been in a fundamentalist evangelical group that basically gave us a socialist framework of support, they paid the medical bills, place to live, took care of us, did all this stuff. I mean, you can laugh and mock evangelical Christianity all you want, but if you're in a good evangelical community that really takes care of its own, you are a lucky kid.
Yeah.
If you have problems, because they, you know, at least in our group, we did not leave anybody behind, and we didn't shoot the wounded. So I, a total beneficiary of the love and compassion of a certain form of evangelical Christianity. While having said that, wanted to move on from it and see a lot of deficits. And of course, today's evangelicalism is not the one I was raised in. It's a sort of a post-Trump white nationalist cult that is bent on destroying our democracy so it can always win elections at any cost. But that's a different story. So let's rejoin your narrative here on 19. What is the arc between being 19 and an agent today? And what is the arc of becoming a writer? Third question, what are you working on? What would you like people to know about that you're writing?
Okay. Yeah. So the arc was, of course, growing up in this Black community. There's just certain things you're going to do with your time and education, and you're going to shoot for the top. You're going to excel, you're going to achieve, and you're going to be a good representation of your community. And of course, you know, making sure that your children do that after you. So I was going to be a neurosurgeon. I mentioned that as a joke earlier, but I really was going to be a neurosurgeon. And I just started to, you know, as I was doing that undergrad work, I've, you know, started to think about, is this really what I want to do for the rest of my life? I mean, do I really, really connect with this? And, you know, the answer was no. And started to really do some, you know, soul searching and trying to figure out, well, what am I going to be doing? And really just ended up thinking back to the classes in high school I did not want to skip. Because I used to, you know, as a senior and junior, are skipping classes. There was one class I just would not skip, and that was English. And I just so enjoyed literature. I enjoyed the discussion. I love the philosophy. I love the stretching of absolutes and things, just really kind of turning things on their head. So anyway, changed my major, changed schools. That was all at 19. That was when I was like, well, I don't think I want to be a Seventh-day Adventist anymore. I don't want to be a neurosurgeon. I don't want people telling me what my future is supposed to be. I don't, I just got kind of, there's sort of like this expectation and pressure. Sure. I felt. And I was like, I'm done with it. So I went to a public college, went to University of Alabama in Huntsville, and switched my degree, stopped going to the same churches. I mean, like all of this at the same time. And it was probably one of the best decisions that I made. While also recognizing the huge blessing and benefit of growing up in a very tight Black community where excellence in education was the focus. Of course, there's dysfunction and all of that, but that was beside the point. So anyway, getting out into the world, I realized the blessing that I had of growing up in a Black community where my identity was secure and it was fortified and it was not shaky. I don't have there's some Black people who, especially Black Christians who were raised in white evangelical spaces. Sure. That's not my experience. And I'm actually grateful for that. But I know that they have reasons to be grateful for what they went through too. But anyway, so yeah, I just started working as an editor. And through that work, developed relationships with authors and just really enjoyed.
And now, weren't you doing some editing in a field of religious publishing as well?
Yes. So I worked for a evangelical, very conservative publisher.
Sure.
Charisma House. Yeah. Coming right out of being in this Black community, and then so I'm very serious. What do you call that? Culture shock.
Yes, I'm sure.
So it was very different for me. But, like you were saying, in your experience, having the compassion of that particular group of people, there was a lot that I learned. It was like a really, it was a valuable boot camp in my opinion. And so kind of set me up for the work that I'm doing today. I worked at Scholastic for a couple of years too, as a senior editor for children's books. And now, my focus, and my goal is to, having always, so after leaving that Oakwood, Huntsville environment and moving out into the publishing world, as a Black woman, being one of 1% to 2% of Black people who are in publishing, I felt that even today.
And do you include authors in that, or are you talking about people who publish?
Publishing professionals, gatekeepers. Mm-hmm. So 1% to 2% of us are Black.
Because now you're looking for authors, I guess, diverse from any background, but also with a kind of a global focus on professionals who come from the Black community and other people of color and so forth, or is that too focused for you as an agent? I mean, how do you see that?
No, it's not. No, it's not too focused. Of course, I represent a diverse group of authors, of course. So there are white authors that I represent, and I definitely appreciate that. And I, work hard just for them as well as, but my focus is for authors of color. The reason why is because the gatekeeping experience for authors of color is the challenge.
Yes, of course.
Understanding the language of authors, of diverse authors of color, Black authors, being able to take that message and translate it so that the editors and marketing people and salespeople understand the compelling nature of their work in terms of reaching even their community. So in my experience in publishing, when we're talking about, well, who's the target audience? Who are the most common book buyers? Sure. Publishing says middle-aged white women.
These days, publishing says, how big is the author's social media footprint?
That as well. And for people of color, all of those paradigms, all of those matrices look different or slightly different. Sometimes, of course, there could be overlap. But even understanding authors of color platform, really trying to be able to translate that. And I know I can.
When you say translate, interrupt you for a second here, is it translate the author of color, the Black writer, to a white reader via the gatekeeper, or translate to the gatekeepers, and then it would be more to the general market of all kinds of people?
Absolutely. You got it.
Or are there people writing about because if you come out of religious books, you realize, of course, that it's a pretty closed circle. These books are not for the general public. These are religious books for a religious market, and they don't expect people in the general readership to cotton on. And there's nothing wrong with niche publishing or even just a certain type of thing. But I know as an author that I struggle to, for instance, in the book of mine coming out in November, Fall in Love, Have Children, Stay Put, Save the Planet, Be Happy. I made a big point of making sure that I was consulting almost exclusively women scientists, very aware that I'm a white male writing to a family subject. And of course, women have been identified more with being the providers and gatekeepers of family, although that's crazy. And my book's trying to change that and tell men that they'll be happier if they make connections too, but that's a different subject. But I understand what it's like to be of a particular race, at a particular age, at a particular moment, trying to communicate a subject that really on the surface looks as if I should be a 30-year-old feminist teaching in a university writing this book. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I do, yes.
And so I'm not asking this question of you from the perspective of you're a Black woman, so you must know something about Black authors. I'm asking this as a fellow writer who is trying to communicate to a much wider audience than on the surface. If you put me on a talk show and I walk in, I'm not the guy who would be pigeonholed right away as, hey, this is the guy representing, a much wider group than just what he looks like.
Yeah.
So that's the perspective. So I'm aware of that as part of the process of writing nonfiction books on subjects. And I'd like to hear how you work with authors, Black, white, female, male, non-binary, whomever, to break out of the received wisdom of who they ought to be writing for.
Yeah. I think, my position is unique because I do see things from a number of perspectives differently than the majority culture of publishing.
Yeah.
So being able to offer recommendations to writers about how to package, shape, communicate, articulate different messages that may, even as we were talking about writers putting their ideas together, sometimes writers have they're creative people. We're creative people.
Sure.
So we're going to think things sometimes we may be thinking way outside the box of what feels safe for people.
Yeah.
Being able to help an author navigate that is definitely part of my work. Whether it's, working with authors of ethnic diversity, when we're talking about race and all of these issues, being able to help them navigate that space. And, and even it's more for me helping publishers understand and see the value of them and their audience. Yes. So expanding beyond just saying, okay, well, how does this fit for a white audience, the majority audience, no, we want authors of color to be able to freely speak to their audience as well. How do you reach an audience of color? And so the challenge, of course, is that when publishing is not very diverse, there's little understanding and awareness of how to, and trust even. The trust from those audiences is not there. They don't necessarily trust the gatekeepers, and they don't get information the same way that marketing and salespeople who are white may pass information around. So having diverse audiences is critically important, having diverse professionals and,
within the publishing business, and you are one as an agent. So can you take a minute here and talk about some of the writers you're working with? Just describe a couple of people and tell me a little bit about their stories so that we get a feel for, the specifics of what it means to, put some professionals of color on the map. Like, who are we talking about? Male, female, non-binary, gay, straight, young, old. Give us a feel for the kind of people you're looking for and also representing. And by the way, for anybody watching this, all the links are going to be put up to everything we're talking about here, Embolden Media Group and Jevon, and how to get in touch. If you're an author and want to talk to her, if you're a publisher and want to talk to her, do that. And by the way, Jevon, let me say here, and I mean this, and if you follow up with an email, you'll find that I'm not just saying this. When you find someone and you need help promoting them as an author, I will very much be there. I have your back. Okay. So as you go forward in what you're doing, I'm not Don Corleone. I can't solve all your problems, and if you need a favor, you call me.
Yeah, I need a guy like that.
I have 3 good friends in publishing. One of them is old. I think the other one died. Okay, I'm down to 1 good contact. But hey, I'll use what little, I wouldn't be on here begging people to pre-order my book if I could just push a button.
Yeah.
But, and by the way, pre-order my book if I could just push a button.
Yeah, push.
Yeah. No, I'm not. I don't mean the general audience. I mean you, Jevon. You're my one reader. But no, in all seriousness, if I can help you promote some folks, we have this podcast. I have some connections. I have people I can send things to. I give blurbs to books. I've written some forwards for folks, and I would be honored to be of any help I can be to what you're doing. And that said, those watching In Conversation with Frank Schaeffer will find out how to get in touch with Jevon, authors, editors, publishers, people who want to work with her, find out more about what you're doing. Okay, come back to what I asked you. Give me some stories of the sort of people you're working with.
Oh, that's great. So one of my authors right now that I'm working with is a anti-racist activist, educator. Her name is Faith Brooks.
Faith Brooks, okay.
Faitth Brooks. And she is in social media as Faith B, Faith with 2 T's. She's just doing extraordinary work, a young woman.
I don't want to ask her age, but I want to ask her age. How old are we talking about? Yeah.
So some of my authors, in their 20s and 30s,
okay.
40s, so we have a nice range, 60s okay, so even.
Give me her story. Sorry.
So Faith has been working, and she's a social worker at background. She's been working in this in the faith space for a while, trying to help allies understand how to be good allies. And so and she has a really incredible story. So right now we're actually in the middle of working on her memoir that she's publishing with a division of Penguin Random House. She's working with Waterbrook and Multnomah on her book right now. It's coming out.
You got a title for it?
It's called Remember Me Now.
Will you think that title will stick as it goes through the process?
I think it's gonna stick.
Okay, and so let's and when that might that be published?
That's coming in fall 2022.
So Remember Me Now, fall 2022. Yeah. Memoir, and just tell me her name again.
Faith Brooks.
Faith Brooks. Okay.
Faith with 2 T's.
And what sort of stories will be in that memoir? Just give me a real short thumbnail of her journey.
Yeah. So the book is called A Journey Back to Myself and Love Letters to Black Women.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, it's really powerful. Her story is the catalyst for even why she's writing was the murder of Breonna Taylor. Just really rocked her world.
Sure.
And so that's what she'll be writing about, and sharing her story, as well as writing to Black women of various ages and stages as they're going through their journey of becoming who they are, realizing their value. And she's kind of like, Black women deserve their flowers now. We should not have to be saying her name after she's dead.
Yeah,
so.
Exactly. Well, when that comes out, let's do another one. Maybe you and Faith will get on here together and we can talk about
that'd
it.
Be nice.
Let's book her on here to promote it.
Absolutely.
So give me one other story or another couple.
Yeah.
And before I ask you any more questions, because this is very interesting. Okay, so we've got her. Who else might you be working with?
Oh, the other one is one of, she's just a beautiful, beautiful writer, Korean American woman who's writing her story, her own faith journey of what it was like to be Korean American and
I love that.
Christian in the evangelical space, what that felt like, what it's called. Oh goodness.
What's her name anyway?
Oh, her name is Tasha June.
Okay, say it again.
Tasha June. Jun.
Okay, Tasha June, and she's writing a book, and you don't remember the working title.
I'm going to tell you. I'm going to find this because so I definitely would have. So everyone listening, Jevon is an introvert, and Jevon doesn't always have words at the tip of her.
Okay, and I'll just tell everyone listening, if you've watched any of my other podcasts, you will know that I keep screwing up the title of my own new book.
Right.
And my producer, Ernie, writes desperate little messages in the chat section here saying, your name is Frank Schaeffer.
Oh.
You know, here's your book title. And by the way, the name of your program is, and it's sad that it has to happen. So not only are you in good company.
Oh, I love it.
Yes. So I am so pleased you did this. And Ernie, my producer, who I love, I hope you're watching. And, you know, next time you mock me, I'm going to say, okay, so you're mocking Jevon too now?
Yes.
Out on all of us?
I am a good sport when it comes to this because I feel like the power of our brains, they're going faster than we can. And
we have to explain to Ernie and all our producers, look, we have better things to do.
Our brains are, running a mile a minute.
Exactly.
So it's called A Roar That Trembles.
Oh, that's good.
And so she's looking at different stories related to her.
And when will it come out?
That is supposed to be coming out in September 2022.
Okay.
So we're in the middle of that.
Do you know who's publishing that?
Yes, that is being published by Tyndale.
Oh, okay. Well, they published some books of my mom's back in the day. Edith Schaeffer. So she's in good company. Tell her that, mom paid for the printing presses that are going to print her book. Those. So that's good. Well, listen, again, when her book comes out, I love both of those titles, and you have other people. Make sure you make use of us and get in touch with Ernie and say, look, I have a good author to interview. And we'll promote them. We can make that part of what we do. I would love to be the first person you call when you have a good new woman author of whatever color or background with a good story to tell. Call Frank Schaeffer.
Okay, I think these two just have wonderful stories. I think they'd be perfect.
That's really good.
I will follow up. Yeah.
Yeah, you follow up on that. And then, the only favor I ask of you is once in a while, if don't have something better to do or you're forgetting someone's name, just remember the title of my new book, Fall in Love, have children, stay put, save the planet, be happy. And tell people, look, I'm trying to remember my author's book, but while you're waiting, pre-order.
Yeah, I do have that one. Yes.
So he can keep doing this podcast and promote my authors. I mean, it's a very circuitous deal.
Yeah, absolutely. We talked about that early on, how writers want to have this symbiotic relationship. Absolutely.
We got to do that. So that's interesting. So let me just use the time we have left to go to sort of another place. All right, we've talked about their writing. We've talked about your agency. In the best of all possible worlds, forget the professional stuff for a minute. Forget agencying and writing and everything else. How do you see your own journey in the best of all possible worlds? And I'll give you a thumbnail of where I would go. And that is that I remain good friends with my grown children, and I keep having the ability to do childcare for my 3 youngest grandchildren that I see every day. As soon as we're done here, I'm rushing off to Nora's school. She's 7. I'm picking her up. I already have a backpack packed with her snack and her bathing suit, so she can change in the back of the car while I take her to the beach after school. And that's my idea of my best, that's sort of the center of my day here. And we all have things like that mean a lot to us. And it doesn't have to be family or kids or whatever, but usually when you cut to the chase with people, they talk about their professional stuff and they do this and that and the other. you get a little under the surface when you know someone, you find out their actual agenda has nothing to do with the way they're identified as a publisher or agent or author. So I guess this would be the dramatic way to put the question. Jevon, who are you really under there? I'm a grandfather who cooks for his grandchildren. Who are you?
Oh, wow. I'll have to start with things that I do, that I enjoy, and then try to figure out how to work back toward that.
Yeah.
So I love having a pet. I love my dog.
Yeah.
His name is Langston Hughes Bolden.
And where is he sitting right now? Where's Langston?
Langston is actually in his carrier because he was just kind of busy today. And I was like, well, if we're going to do this podcast,
we're doing a serious podcast.
Yeah, I need to focus. So
how big is he, by the way? What kind of a dog are we talking about?
This is a Cocker Spaniel.
Oh, nice.
So he's kind of medium sized, really fluffy right now.
That's nice. How old is he?
He's 3.
So Langton's 3. Yeah, it's about the same age as Zip. Zip's a little older. He's 5 now, my little dog. Okay, so there's Langton, and you enjoy him.
Yes, and I enjoy home a whole lot. So cooking and feeling comfortable in my home. I love beautiful scents and incense and candles and
I see many books in the background.
Yes, I have tons of books. I have them on this side as well.
That's right.
So, whether I helped authors or not, books would be
books would be part of the deal.
Yeah. I grew up with books too. So
left to your own devices, you're sitting there reading a book, and Langton is either in your lap or sitting next to you.
Absolutely. There's a cup of coffee or a glass of wine.
And where does Langton sleep?
Well, in my bed.
Of course, that's where Zip sleeps too. So here's the next question. Can you get to sleep without Langton in your bed? Because I can get to sleep without Zip, but I can't fall back asleep if I have to get up in the night and pee, because I'm an old guy. So peeing in the night is part of the deal now. More than you needed to know. But anyway, Zip has, ever since I've had Zip now, I can get that second sleep.
Yeah.
So it has Zip, it's very comforting.
So Langston is really cool. I mean, we don't sleep up under each other. So he sleeps on the edge of the bed over there. So if
he's there, there.
Yeah, we're good. We're kind of like, well, I see you over there. We're good. So yeah, it's nice. And I have 2 children who are in the process of becoming beautiful adults. 18 and 15.
Oh, wow. That's great.
Yeah. So there's lots of engagement there.
And how old who are these boys, girls? Who are they?
So Autumn is the oldest girl. She's 18. My son, Austin, is 15.
So is she wrapping up high school now?
She's just working right now. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm working. So she graduated?
Mm-hmm. She's finished with high school.
Oh, good. Mm-hmm. And are they living at home?
Yes.
I mean,
and neither of them drive.
Good.
So
keep it that way.
My time is spent probably like 4 hours out of the day is taxiing.
Yeah. So basically, you are not an agent or an author. You are a chauffeur.
Yes,
I've been there and done that.
Yeah, and so that's me outside of work. Also, anime with them.
That's great.
Yeah. So.
And how are they doing? And you don't have to say, well, I mean, and I'm not going to pry, but how's everybody doing? Because 15 and 18 is cuspish kind of ages. By 18, I already had a child.
Right.
And this was not supposed to happen. At 15, at your son's age, I ran away from a boarding school and made it all the way to Switzerland from the United Kingdom without a passport, lying my way through. So that's how my childhood was going. How are your kids? I was running away from school and getting people pregnant. How are your kids doing?
They are much more homebody-ish than that.
Good. You must be doing a better job as a mom than my parents did.
And it's interesting because, you're right. These are some really interesting ages. I thought that the toddler years were challenging, but teens are a whole other different thing. Yeah, and it's valuable and it's rich. but it's challenging.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're doing well. I mean, they are not running the streets, as some people would say. And I also think that this part of their life that we're talking about is really impacted by the pandemic.
Yeah, no kidding. And you know what? Out of 15 years or 18 years, 2 years of school chaos, and that's like 20 years out of my life. I mean, that's huge.
It's huge. It's huge. And
so have they been at home working remotely? What have they done?
It's been such a challenge. I'll be honest with you. It's been such a challenge. So my son is, my daughter did some virtual. My son tried to do virtual. It was not his thing. So we are taking a big risk by sending him to school. He is vaccinated. Yeah. We're all vaccinated. And of course, so this is where the blessing of my Seventh-day Adventist background comes in, right, where natural health is really a big deal to us.
Yeah, so it's not weird to do extra things.
Not weird. So yeah, we're doing all of the things we can do to take care of our bodies, and sending him out into the world.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, listen, I'm so glad you shared some personal stuff. And next time, by the way, you can have your dog. Barking does not bother me. Okay. When I interviewed Moby the other day, the musician, he's a big animal person, and I wanted to make sure that we were all relaxed. So I had Zip on my lap. Happened to be in the room, and then as soon as Moby saw my dog, it's like we had a whole different interview, a good one. So you can bring your dog in anytime, or the children, or anybody else.
Okay.
Let me just say a couple things before we wrap up here. I'm participating in an online course run by my friend Gareth Higgins, founder of the Wild Goose Festival, and it's called The Porch, and beginning September 26th, and it's based on my forthcoming new book, which I've already found 20 ways to refer to here in what was supposed to be Jevon's interview. Fall in love, have children, stay put, save the planet, be happy. And please visit theporchcourses.com to become part of this. And as we say to everybody, there is a fee, but if you can't pay it, you just write us a letter saying, I can't pay that, but I still want to be part of it. And you will be, because money is not the point. So the new book comes out November 2. Please pre-order, do me a favor. And Jevon, everything that you are part of will be linked on our page. Anywhere this interview shows up, there will be links to what you are doing, and so forth and so on. So thank you very much, Jevon, for being with me. I want to finish up with one last question, and that is, we didn't get to something you're writing. Are you writing something yourself now, or are you kind of waiting for other people's books to come out as an agent?
So, I have written some things, writer resources. I have written a little book called So They Say You Should Write a Book.
I like that. So they say you should write a book. And where's that available?
So it's available on all online platforms. Online?
Okay.
So Amazon, Books A Million, Barnes and Noble.
And give me a 30-second rundown of what that's about.
So basically, it's just really, really practical information for new authors who want to write a book that people will buy and read.
So in other words, you're helping my competitors.
I am. So you probably don't want to, yeah.
So as Billy Crystal said in his inimitable way, why don't you just give me a paper cut and squeeze lemon juice?
Yeah, I'm just emboldening the creative.
You're emboldening new. Yeah, just wait for. Hey, I'm old. I'm gonna die soon. There'll be another slot. Just let me finish out my time.
Let you. Yes, I know. And then I wrote another book called Pray, Hear, Write, which is a practice of involving God in your writing process, prayer in your writing process. So that's also available on Amazon and all platforms.
Well, next time we do a thing together here, which we will, I hope, Jevon, let's do another project together. Let's just do that. Okay, we've done the biographical stuff in Church Girl and 19 and how your dog is and my dog and how and so forth and so on. Let's do your books next time and just and do a Jevon Bolden show on Jevon Bolden's books. And do that next time around. So once again, I'm doing a thing. Please visit theporchcourses.com to be part of my porch course that I'm teaching with Gareth Higgins. And by the way, 5 guests who are with us each time, good people who will be helping us teach that course. Pre-order my new book, Fall in Love, Have Children, Stay Put, Save the Planet, Be Happy. And it comes out November 2nd. And please get in touch with Jevon if you are a writer or if you are somebody who is in the publishing world and would like to see something change there. Say more than 2% of people of color as gatekeepers. That's a big deal, and it's a really important one because the gatekeepers are where it all starts. So Jevon, thank you so much for being with me today.
It was fun. I enjoyed it so much. Thank you.
Good. And let me just reiterate that I'd like to help you promote your authors. Yeah. So you have Ernie, my producer's email. When you have somebody ready to talk about a book that's about to come out, then I will help them promote it. And when I do other authors, by the way, I do not mention my own book all the time, but I do in this case, because you're an agent, you get it.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So much love to you. And thanks for doing what you're doing. We will talk again soon, I hope.
Sounds great. I love it. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.